Lilith, that did not happen. All right,
I'm like, oh well, I guess there's no way we're going back to that. So that's a good.
Yep, that's
where we are now.
That's Anno has made better decisions. Though it seems like he didn't have a lot to do with the last movies. Like he deferred a lot of that to some other people. I don't think we need to. I don't think we need. I think we should review the show on it. Like talk about it from the merits of itself, from an author is dead perspective, mostly because. I tried to read.
Need to discuss any meta.
No, I don't want to talk about
things that happen because we don't know.
I did read a bunch about it, and it's.
How do you know that it's all true? What you read?
Yeah, it's interviews with Anno, like directly. It's interviews with other people who
could be lost in translation too, even if it is.
I mean, yeah, but that's true of anything. But
yeah. Well, I mean, the movie itself could be, but
I found a whole bunch
don't
of
want to say like, oh yeah, so and so person made this decision and that business whatever out and then that not be true.
Yep, but it's pretty well documented. A lot of this, they were very public about the production issues that happened. We just didn't pay attention because we were waiting till the end.
That's
but the problem is, if we start talking about that meta, there is so much that affected how those movies were made and like what ended up being shown in theaters and everything that it would have to be its own show. And it's just, that's way too much to talk about.
Also, it would just be us saying what we read online. Someone else who wants to know that could just read it online.
That's what a podcast.
That show where us talking about the movie that we watched, we're now creating a new content that you couldn't just read.
But I do have opinions about like, especially everything around the new character. There's a lot of knowing how that went down, who was involved in that character, and when. The two sub-producers that Anno basically said, figure out what to do with this character, and then what came back, like that colors my perception of the character, but doesn't really matter. We'll have more than an hour's worth of shit to say about this.
I did notice that the character didn't was sort of tacked on, right?
Yep. I feel like
their purpose in this story just to,
the best thing I could say is they're
another Ava pilot.
From an author is dead perspective, their purpose was an anti-Gendo in a sense, like someone else who knew Yui, and also sort of we made Asuka different for all the reasons we'll talk about. So this character like plugged the gap of a normal-ish Lilin being in a relationship with a character like Shinji. Because there's no one like that. Who can Shinji talk to in this? Who's actually a Lilin based on what we know? All right, anyway, let's get going. I'm going to hit record. I started the stream a little while ago because there's a bunch of people waiting. So...
No, wait, I got to open Audition. That's the thing I forgot to do.
The worst thing is the Tumbling Down song has been stuck in my head off and on since I watched these movies, even though it's not even in those movies.
Well, they had that other song.
Oh yeah, they got a bunch of good songs that serve the same purposes.
And he can't go without his Timpani song, right?
No.
What the hell's the name of that? My favorite song.
Oh, but
I could do a whole episode breaking down that song.
Oh, we could do if we were still doing anime content, I would be game for an anime panel that was just the music of Evangelion for an hour.
No, we could do just that one song. What the hell's the name of the song?
I don't even know, but I'd know because they play that song in one of the pivotal scenes in the third and the fourth movie. Despite all the new music, that song started, and all I thought was, well, this is the actual climax. He used that song.
It's Decisive Battle.
That song.
Yep.
That song's up on my tier list of Rim Gets Pumped, right next to E1M1 in Doom. Or E1.
Reuse. I'm hoping, they're making what? Shin Ultraman and Shin Kamen Rider? And they use the song in Shin Godzilla. I wonder if he's going to use the song in those two as well.
I also learned something else that is meta that we don't have to get into before we get. So, a bunch of the stuff, the new proper noun things that were introduced, but were not fully explained because it didn't matter. They were pretty much all Ultraman or adjacent references, like specifically.
Yeah, probably.
Like the Golgotha object,
so
like
was
clearly.
The first one.
Yep. But the Golgotha object, like there's a whole thing about that's a thing from multiple other properties, and
yeah, I knew that was an Ultraman thing. When
yep.
You didn't know that?
But there's a bunch of things like that.
All right. And the thing is, a lot of those unexplained things are actually you sort of understand what they are.
Oh yeah, obviously that's like the precursor civilization that sent the atoms and the Liliths out into the universe in the first place. like the spawn of all souls, whatever, beyond human comprehension. I like how they literally in the show were like, yep, they're in the movie. There is literally no way.
Added a lot more clarity on like the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's like, oh, it's actually just like, instructions from the last time this happened.
Yep.
Right, that Sele still has. So
In
that's
fact,
how they know what's going down.
It could even be depending. Well, let's not predo the show. We'll just say this during the show. But yeah, I got a lot to say about that specifically. I got a lot of thoughts.
Dead Sea Scrolls, all the instruction manual that came with these stupid orbs that crashed on Earth.
And the instruction manual kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Like, all right, this time, do the 10th angel like this, the 11th angel like this. You need like 9 spears of Longinus for this recipe.
Let's try another sphere this time. I don't know.
Yep.
We don't have too many ingredients to work with. All we can do is change the quantity and the order.
Yep. I like how there are an infinite number of fake spheres of Longinus in this movie, and then there are there's 3 real ones. Anyway, all right.
Oh, and then they make one.
Well, they make one.
They make the spear, the Gaius spear they make.
Yeah, which is arguably a real spear, but there's the infinite series of Avas that are the fake ones that all have their own like fake spheres that they made from the black egg materials. Anyway. There's a lot of sci-fi. You could do a whole fucking podcast just on the sci-fi, like specific elements of this show.
Oh, that's right. It's actually not. You just watched these.
I've watched 3 of them twice and 1 of them once. So
right. So I only watched them once each, and I watched them when they came out. But I just remembered, right? The one they make, isn't it like they make it out of Misato, right? It's like
sort of
turns into it.
Well, Misato's soul is like an element of it, but it's also made from the ship that was one of the 4 atoms. Remember, there's 4 atoms instead of 1 atom?
She herself and the ship to create the final spear, the Gaius one. Yeah.
Because there were 4 ships, because there were 4 atoms. There's no continuity between why in the original Ava there's only 1 atom and now there's 4, but who gives a shit about that?
I don't know.
Anyway, all right. I've hit record.
I hit it a while ago.
All right. Da-da-da. We're good to go. The stream is good. Everything's good. I got an opening bit. Let's do it. It's Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we are going to give our final spoiler-filled thoughts on the Rebuild Evangelion movies. So, as you all know, I hope by now you have at least 2 or 1 if it was the Johnson & Johnson COVID shots in your body. If you're in America, there's literally no excuse to have not gotten them, unless you have a medical reason, of course. But we're hitting into the booster season, and at least in New York, they just changed the rule. So any adult over 18.
The rule is, if you go ask for one, your doctor shouldn't say no.
Yep.
And it's like, well, that doesn't help me, right? It's like, you got to tell me, it's like, yeah, I can get one now. Okay, but should I? I need a doctor to tell me if I should. It's because, I don't know.
The New York guidance was pretty much, if you're an adult over 18 and it's been 6 months, you can do it. So I'm doing it.
Can is different from should.
Yep, I just will. There's a surplus of shots available, so it's not like I'm taking one.
I mean, that's not a problem, right? But it's like, should you? Do you need to?
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that immunity from all the vaccines wanes over time, and that seems to be a big part of the rise in infections in Europe now.
Then how come they don't just come out and say I should? If they said I should, I just go get it. I'd be like, oh, okay. But if they're saying you can, it's like, well, now I don't know if I should.
Yep, I'm pretty much going to get it because I can. So I'm getting it next Monday. I got an appointment.
I mean, I guess, my doctor, like the same policy I had.
Oh, I asked one medical. I asked one medical, like, hey, should I get it? They were like, absolutely, do it.
I guess I could ask my actual doctor. But, last time I waited and without any prompting whatsoever, my doctor was like, come get it. And now there's been no such prompting. So
I have in my entire adult life never been to the same doctor more than once.
I've been going to this one. I went to this one doctor, I guess after I moved to the city. So I guess 2009, right? Or maybe, yeah, I guess. And then since late 2000s, I went to a doctor at this office, NYU office. And then the doctor, like was the best doctor I ever saw, regular doctor at least.
Yep.
And then like I only saw him twice, and then he went away to Florida to become like a big medical director. And I was like, I guess he was too good a doctor.
Oh, what happened to me was
And then I just kept going to the same office, and I just got shifted to another doctor in the same office, and he's okay. But I've been seeing that one doctor for, many years.
See, I used to have an HSA like back when, before Obamacare and the ACA. So I really never went to the doctor unless I was sick, and I got a physical like every few years. So every time I went to get a physical, whatever doctor had been my PCP had left the practice, and I had to start all over with a new doctor. And then I changed insurances, and my doctor didn't take the insurance multiple times, so that kept happening. And then now, in these times, I started getting a physical every year because I'm approaching 40, and every single year, my PCP either stops being a doctor or like leaves the practice, and I get a new doctor every single time.
Pretty sure my doctor is still there because he's still in the app from the office.
Yep.
So.
But even my doctor now said, yeah, you don't really need a physical every year. There's nothing, there is nothing wrong with you whatsoever. She was like, I even was like, should I get a colonoscopy? Like, I'm approaching 40. And she was like, no, not at all. There's literally no reason for you to do anything. So, yeah, I might change doctors again just to get some.
I usually tell the doctor, usually when I go to the doctor, they're like, I'm like, there's things wrong with me. And they're like, no, there isn't.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I have nothing wrong with me except some sports medicine stuff, but I have a separate doctor for sports medicine because of a program my insurance does. Yeah. But this is not to help you if you're sick or anything. This is literally like medically driven sports, like athlete training stuff. So I can get like my knee worked on and do running clinics. I haven't done any of that because COVID, but probably next year I'll start going into that clinic once a week to do like running studies and things.
Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, we got some news. Anime NYC.
Oh, yeah. Anime NYC is happening this weekend. We're not going there.
Nope.
It's in the Javits Center. And it's a lot of good stuff that's happening there. There's another Bell preview screening, but I think it's separately ticketed.
Yep.
So you have to, I don't know if you need an Anime NYC ticket. I think you do. And then you need to get the Bell ticket in addition.
Yep. We have never been to Anime NYC.
I think they've got a My Hero Academia music guy. He's like a big guest. People are excited about.
That's a big show that I kind of bounced off of, but
yeah, there's if you look at the Anime NYC like stuff, it's like, damn, this shit is
well, like we've said, we have not been to Anime NYC, but we have seen how it goes. I know people who have gone to it, and we know a lot of people
who work on it.
We know a lot of people who work on it, and it's basically like a who's who of who knows how to run a convention from like the world. Like, it's kind of amazing the team they got together. So all indications are this is like one of the best top tier anime cons there is.
Yeah, I don't know. But if you're a person who feels safe going to a convention in the New York City Javits Center this weekend, literally,
the
19, 20, 21, you
got to be vaccinated, which is A+. And masking and like all the right stuff. They're doing what they need to do.
Yeah, it's right on the front of their website, all their policies and such. So
yeah,
there it is.
So in some other news, I'm not reserving judgment until I see it. I'm gonna watch the new Cowboy Bebop, obviously, so we can talk about it. But something that's become...
I held off my cancellation of Netflix just to watch that show. And then as soon as I watch it, I'm going to cancel it because I'm on HBO Max right now.
Yep, same. I switched to HBO Max mostly because of Dune, but there's a ton of other stuff I want to watch there. So Netflix, as soon as I finish Cowboy Bebop, and we're watching the last season of Lupin. Not Lupin the Third, but Lupin, that French show, which is...
I was going to watch that, but once I learned that it was like had more seasons, I'm like, well, I'll just go back to Netflix when it's all got more seasons and watch it.
It's real good, though. And I think the season we're watching is the end. I haven't checked, but it's gearing up.
Okay.
I'll confirm for you so you'll know, because then you can binge it before you shut off Netflix. It's real good.
Shows, for example, like Dragon Prince. So I'm like, well, they said Dragon Prince is going to be 8 seasons or something.
I can wait now.
That's like, well, I can cancel Netflix, and then once season 8 comes out, I'll turn Netflix back on and watch it,
Exactly.
Because that's the thing is like, I'm avoiding paying for cable TV. If I sign up to 8 subscription services all at once.
Still cheaper than cable.
I might as well get cable at that point.
Except cable doesn't have any of that shit.
Some of it, but it's like I'm only really getting a good deal if I just go one at a time. And as long as, there might be movies and things like that they put up and take down from their services over time, but the only reason to actually subscribe to one is for their exclusive shit. And no one's going to take down their exclusive shit from their own platform.
Yep.
Right? That live action Cowboy Bebop is going to be on Netflix from the time it's ready until as long as Netflix exists. Right? Why would they ever take it down from there unless there was some problem or something? It's their show.
We rarely consume reviews of things. Like, we review things.
Like if Steam took Half-Life 2 off of out of our Team 42.
Go get Half-Life 2 on the Epic Store only.
Right, that would be weird as hell.
But I tend not to read reviews of things, like just in general, because I'm going to review stuff.
Reviews of things either.
But it has been hard to ignore the fact that pretty much every review I have seen of the new Cowboy Bebop from any source, anime fans, non-anime fans, big publications,
so I'm trusting you on this.
Small publications, have ranged from mediocre to terrible, and I have found 0 positive reviews, which is a worrying sign. So what I'm going to link to here...
It's not surprising. I basically assume that all live-action adaptations are meh. I think that, if it is indeed meh, and what you're saying is true, and the reviewers are correct, and it is bad, then that doesn't surprise me.
Nope.
But what I do notice that I didn't watch too much of it, just like maybe one.
I watched the trailer, and I went from the first trailer. I got excited, like, wow, this might exceed expectations. But the second trailer, stylistically, it was amazing. Like the style of how they shot it gave me all this hope. But then when the actors started talking, like, the acting was really stiff, the dialogue was bad and stilted, and it kind of sounded like a shitty anime dub.
Well, I mean, I
didn't want to judge it based on that, but my danger sense suddenly started screaming at me like, this is not going to be good. I
watched one promotional item. I don't know which of the
Was it the one where Faye grabs the frame around the scene and throws it away?
I don't remember.
Okay.
It was so long ago. But what I did notice is other people who I know who were closely following all the promotional material, right, were clearly A, getting hyped, and having positive feelings, and B, there was a clear attempt, right, even from someone who only watched a little bit of the promotional material.
The rationalization?
Right. There was a clear attempt by Netflix to make people who are already fans of the original believe that Netflix and the people who worked on this cared about the original a lot and were trying to honor it appropriately, right? So, and if you took them in good faith, that's a reason as a fan of the original, which is still an all-time masterpiece artwork, like Mona Lisa level. It's like that the live action would not be like every other garbage live action anime adaptation ever. But, I still have no idea. I'm going to watch it and find out.
Yep.
I didn't see any of these reviews that Rim is talking about. So,
yep. What I'll link to is the most charitable review I could find, which was from The Atlantic. What's lost when a classic anime is adapted by Netflix? The charm of the original Cowboy Bebop and many other Japanese animated series is not just in its style, but its storytelling. And my prediction about how Bebop will be, we'll see if I'm right or wrong, I'll put this out there, is that it's going to be shot really stylistically well. It'll look beautiful. The music will be fantastic. But I have this suspicion the writing, story, and dialogue is just going to be stilted and bad.
I mean, I basically assume that of all live action television productions, period.
Yeah,
especially from the United States.
So. You're weird though, because you don't watch anything. So
movies, if there's something, I don't know what it is. I still can't explain it. But movie acting is not the same as the vast majority of TV acting. Right? Or there's something about, TV production.
What
right?
was the last live action TV show you watched to completion?
I guess The Mandalorian was the last time this stood out for me, where it was like, yeah, this is not like a movie. Right?
See, I took the opposite. It felt more like a Star Wars movie than any Star Wars movie that's come out since I
didn't even watch past what we watched to do that show on it, and I have no desire to ever.
See, this is why I don't trust your opinion on this stuff, because you don't watch anything.
Which is why I think you have bad taste. You just like trash.
Yeah, okay. You can continue to watch whatever it is that you watch.
And whatever other garbage you play. I don't know.
But you don't play any video games either, so what do you...
Yeah, I have very high standards. I have a very short life I'm going to be living. I only eat the finest goods, right? If something is kind of good, nope, that's not good enough. Get it out of here.
So, yeah. Let's go right into the rest of this and do the main show, because we got a lot to say. Let's see.
I don't waste my life watching television.
I watch good television. I like Star
It's
Trek's
not a
real
lot
good
of
shit.
Television. The amount of television you watch is greater than the amount of good television that can possibly exist.
No, Lower Decks is fantastic.
Okay, that's what you're holding up.
Because you don't like Star Trek.
A good way to spend your life watching that kind of show.
All right. But anyway, things of the day. So this Twitter account is, I appreciate it. It's funny, but not funny in the normal sense. It's called Simpson crap memes. And it does something that I haven't really seen anywhere else, and I enjoy it. It's almost similar to, like, there was the Vaporwave movement, which is a real musical movement. And there was the, like, weird subgenre.
Movement as much as a genre? I don't know.
It was, I would argue, and I've seen some arguments to this effect, that it was a movement, but a small one. A very small one, but many movements are small. But there was the subgenre of that was Simpson Wave, which was a legitimate subgenre with multiple people making earnest content, which is crazy that existed and that I'm saying those words, but I do stand by them. But what this account does is they make fairly complex memes from The Simpsons that mash up extremely obscure parts of The Simpsons in ways that are like accurate and true. Like, they're not a stretch. They are accurate and true and funny, but they require a terrifying amount of Simpsons, like, deep knowledge and memory of extremely obscure parts of The Simpsons to understand at all. And this is the kind of humor that I appreciate, but I also understand why very few other people appreciate it. And I'm going to put this out there.
That's the idea, right? Is nothing, an inside joke is funnier, right? And to the people, but obviously it's inside. Most people, it's not funny to them. So the more inside the joke is, right, you actually sort of, there's like this hidden like gold that like only a few people.
But if it's too inside,
amazing flavor.
If nobody but you and your direct and one other person, or even just you, get it, then it almost fails. Like some of those Jackbox social games where you're trying to get one other person, or Dixit too, to figure it out, but not too many people to figure it out, but not nobody. This is like straddling that line in a way that is deeply pleasing to my soul.
All right. Anyway, so
what do you got?
There's this person, and their name is on Twitter is Magitech Knight.
Good night,
right?
good name.
Like Final Fantasy VI.
2 underscores, probably to get away from some other account with 1 underscore.
I don't know. But this person makes, among other things, I assume, dioramas.
Dioramas are a fantastic hobby.
And they were commissioned by somebody with a lot of money to make a very large diorama of...
Oh, shit, that's a banana! I just realized how big this thing is.
Yeah, it's huge. There's if you go in the Twitter thread, there's photos without the banana.
It weighs 35 pounds!
Yeah, it's enormous. So yeah, they commissioned this person to make this very large diorama of the scene in Final Fantasy VI where the Ultros attacks the party on the raft. And they, of course, I guess in accordance with the amount of money they were paid, which had to be a large amount.
It better have been a large amount.
They did a large job. And you have to fucking see this thing because you don't have to pay for it. Whoever's going to keep it in their house can pay for it. And the rest of us can right-click it. So everyone knows, seen it. You got all the same enjoyment out of it that the person who paid for it got. They're just footing the bill for the rest of us. So don't miss your chance to look at this holy shit diorama. You could have put this thing in any number of anime convention art shows and won all the prizes. Oh, and you didn't.
I imagine even at the height of the Otakon Artist Alley, like that giant art auction, this would have been the thing that had an infinite number of bids.
I think, I also think that, the price the person paid for this, I'm going to guess, is lower than what it would go for at auction.
Oh, absolutely. Some rich nerd would if I had to guess, a rich nerd would be willing to pay several $1,000s for this.
I'm sure the person paid several thousand, but I think when
I say several, I mean like 7,000 or 8,000. I could see a weird rich nerd being willing to pay $7,000 or $8,000 for something like this.
I think they'd pay, at auction. I think that might be what more like closer to the price that was paid to commission.
Well, yeah, to your point, an auction, especially a charity auction,
it's going to be tens, 5 digits at least.
Public auctions, if they're run the right way, will drive the price way higher than a direct sale would be.
Right. Well, I mean, for example, right, Desert Bus is happening right now, and they have part of Desert Bus, they have many parts of it, but they auction off items that for charity, and they have both people who, spend the year planning a big fancy thing to craft to put up for auction as a donation, right? And B, people who save money all year in order to purchase, right? So I saw somebody, what were they auctioning? It was a cross stitch, but it was a very high resolution cross stitch, right?
Ooh.
Like a zillion stitches that took like months to make of a scene from the Sandman comic. And that thing went for almost like not 10K, but like maybe 7 or 8, somewhere up there, right? So this thing's going for more than that for sure. I'd be really curious. But yeah, that's
pretty cool.
Just look at this.
Real quick meta moment so we can get right into it. The GeekNights Book Club book, Tale of Genji, ending by the end of the year, come hell or high water.
Well, high water might come.
High water might come, but I feel like even if high water comes, we will still finish that book and do the show on it.
Yeah.
I got a lot of batteries and 5G. I will be at PAX Unplugged for a couple hours to do one panel, Rare Game Mechanics, on the Friday, December, whatever day that is, at 1 p.m. in the Crab God Theater, I think. It'll be on YouTube. Don't go to PAX Unplugged if you're not already going to PAX Unplugged. Like, don't go there just to see that panel. I'm literally recording it. I'm going to put it on YouTube before PAX Unplugged even ends. Let's get right into it. Rebuild of Evangelion. So, if you're new to Geek Nights...
Let's start with... You want to just start with the first one, or you got to do some general comment first?
I want to do a general comment that we've done this pattern in the past. We do it not that often now because we just don't watch shows to their completion that are worthy of this for a lot of reasons lately.
The same show to their completion.
Yep. But we have this concept of a final thoughts show as opposed to a review. And the difference is when we review a show, we review it without spoiling things and without assuming you've seen it.
If you should watch it or not.
Exactly.
If you haven't watched it.
So that's what we already did for the Rebuild of Evangelion.
Right.
And we already did.
It's for people who have already seen it and just want to enjoy talking about it.
Yep. So we're going to assume you have seen the Rebuild of Evangelion and...
Or you don't give a shit.
Yeah, or you don't give a shit.
Which is perfectly valid because I don't believe in spoilers either. If I hadn't seen it, I would listen to this show.
You're not going to know what the fuck we're talking about when we start talking about the Key of Nebuchadnezzar and what that was all about. But also, we're going to spoil effectively the original Evangelion and the original movies and pretty much every possible media related to Evangelion, except the manga, which we haven't read to completion yet, but is very similar to the show, and thus we're definitely spoiling that as well.
And the PlayStation game stuff, where fans like to get a lot of lore from that's not in anywhere, it's not canon anywhere else except the PlayStation game and whatnot.
Evangelion 2, if you watch these movies and then you try to go to the Ava wikis to figure out parts that you didn't understand, you're going to bump into lore from that Apocrypha, which honestly doesn't change anything. It actually just adds tiny amounts of irrelevant context. Like, it gives you a little more about Adam and Lilith and the slight differences between them. But those are things that you could infer from the media as shown without those games.
Anyway, all right. So overall, right, I said this, I think, when we did a review episode, but the Rebuild movies are not a prequel.
Nope.
They're not a sequel. They're not a remake, right? You know, like what's a good example of a remake?
Well, so like wondering
so many of them.
So there was El Hazard, which had an OAV, and then they remade that OAV as a longer television anime, but it wasn't like a sequel. It was just a parallel universe, like same characters, same basic story, but things go differently. Tenchi Muyo did the same thing. There was no AV. Then they made multiple different TV series that aren't in the same continuity. They just use the same characters and the same kind of story.
Okay, here, so a good example of a remake would be something like The Ring, right? Where you had the original one, and then they made an English one. Or there were several Oceans. Were there 2 Oceans? There's at least 2 Oceans 11.
I think there's 3 Oceans at this point.
They redid Planet of the Apes at some point, right?
Yep. Train to Busan is apparently getting a U.S. remake called Last Train to New York. Breaking news, I guess.
Yeah, but basically, a remake is like, okay, that person made that thing. I'm just going to make the same fucking thing again. This is not what that is either, right? So I think it's really appropriate that it called it Rebuild, because upon watching it, it is sort of a it's none of those other things, right?
You could make an argument that you could argue that it occurs in the same continuity of the show with a giant, complicated asterisk. But you could also just say that it's not a strict
multiverse time loop thing, even though it's close to one.
But it's also not a Leiji Matsumoto verse of, it's just these same characters doing something completely different. Imagine taking the original Evangelion, breaking it down into all of its component parts like a Lego set, and rebuilding something from those same parts.
With some new parts.
And a bunch of new parts.
Parts are moved.
So you buy the space shuttle Lego set. You build the space shuttle. It's cool. You tear it down. You buy the Ice Planet Hoth set.
Or not even tearing it down, but necessarily like just it's so old that, it's taken damage.
Take a few pieces away. Take the Ice Planet Hoth set and rebuild it bigger and different, but also the same.
Yep. So movie 1, we don't need to spend too much time on movie 1 except for 2 items. Right? Because movie 1 is identical to the television show, pretty much in every way, except for 2 things. First thing is there is the scene where Masato takes Shinji down to the terminal dogma in the basement.
That happens way earlier.
And so that scene was in the original, but in the movie, it happens earlier. And I think that it's not really any different, but it was necessary because it has to show both the audience and Shinji, because up until that point in the story, Shinji doesn't really understand what's at stake. The angels are trying to get to this physical place to bring about this apocalypse, basically.
Yes, if an angel touches this thing, everyone dies.
And that's what you're trying to prevent, Shinji, and also telling the audience, hey, that's what's happening here. We're trying to keep the angels from reaching the spot, right?
Now, there are a bunch of other minor, plot beats from later episodes of the show that happen earlier and happen in the first movie, but they're not important like this one was. But I would argue
that was a significant difference, and the other significant difference is the very end of
the last 30 seconds of this movie.
The last 30 seconds. So in the last 30 seconds, you see Kaoru. Right?
Yep, on the moon.
On the moon, coming out of a coffin, and there are many coffins, and some of them have lids on, and some of them are open.
Yep.
Right? And so clearly, they're showing you right here that, this has happened before, and it's gonna happen again. We got a whole bunch of Kaorus lined up. Right?
Yep.
This is the current one. He's on the moon somehow, and he's looking at basically an Evangelion / angel being constructed, right? Which I think ends up being Eva 5 or 6 that he pilots, right?
God, there's so many Evas.
He pilots it at the end of the second movie. But basically, there's this Eva being made on the moon that he's going to pilot, and he talks to it, and he says very little, but the little he says a whole lot.
He basically says the equivalent of, all right, Shinji, let's do this.
Right. He's sort of like, he's like, you're the, Xth number this time, the 12th this or whatever, you never change.
Yep.
Right? He's like,
I thought at that moment, but for having not seen the rest of the movies yet, what I thought was those were all the Sele people. And then he was up there too, and he was talking about Sele Chairman number 3. But then I realized...
Okay, so we learned the deal with that scene in movie 2.
Yep.
Right? While in movie 2, right, Futsuki Friday and Landau get in a rocket, and they go into space.
It's interesting because
in space.
It's very similar to the scene in the original show where they go to the Antarctic to do the thing. But
exactly.
Again, it's a replacement for that because remember, and we're assuming you've seen these movies, from the beginning of the last 30 seconds of the first movie, the show goes off the rails. After the second movie, it goes off of the concept of rails to like this new reality of space rails. And then the final movie is, at this point, it's almost like a promare, like ridiculous spectacle.
So anyway, so this scene where they're going up to the moon, right? The movies keep what the TV show had, which is that relationship between, Nerve and Sele, where Sele is supposedly the big, Illuminati organization that's running everything, and Nerve is working for them, but Gendo running Nerve has his own ideas.
Well, let's break it down. From the original show, what we knew was Nerve was the successor agency to Gehern, and both Nerve and Gehern were created for different purposes by Sele. Sele is pulling the strings of the UN, and all the other organizations involved are just chumps who don't know what's up and all get chumped.
Yep.
But of course, the new movies, we see further evolutions where Gehern failed for a bunch of reasons, became Nerve. Nerve splits into Nerve and Will.
Yep.
Arguably, I would say Will and the Wunder and all that, that's free will. Like, that is the third path or the fourth way, or when we get into the I say the fourth way because you would get that inside joke. The moon literally is trying to eat your soul in this fucking movie.
Right. So they go into space in a rocket because I guess there's nothing. They know something's happening on the moon, but they can't see it, and there's no other way for them to see it other than literally getting in a rocket and looking out the window. And also, that just happens to basically make the plot work to where they're not Gendo and Futsuki aren't on Earth during that angel battle. Right? So Misato has to run the show there. But regardless, they look out the window and they see the thing from the end of the first movie. They see the Eva being constructed, right? And that's basically the Eva that they had no hand in making, right? They had a hand in making all the other ones, right? But that's the one that Sele made on its own, right? That's going to carry out that's sort of like their opposition, right? It's like, all right, well, if we're going to, do our own deal and not necessarily do exactly what Sele wants, well, we got to go spy on their plans.
And I do appreciate how it kept that continuity of Gendo and Fuyutsuki are trying to use Nerve for their own purposes, and they're pretending to go along with Sele. But
Fuyutsuki is just sort of, I don't know if his purpose is to just help Gendo's purpose.
Well, though, I want to get to that. I got a lot of thoughts on Fuyutsuki because I didn't expect him to have his big moment at the end.
Fuyutsuki fanboy.
I really like Fuyutsuki as a character for a lot of reasons.
The old man? Okay.
Well, partly because the manga actually gets way more into him. That's one thing you're missing.
Sure it does.
And he's got an interesting deal. Pretty sure he really wanted...
Sadly, the movies as a whole basically cut out so much Ritsuko action.
Oh, they cut out Ritsuko? And they cut out the manga stuff of Fuyutsuki.
She's not really doing much, right?
Yeah, but you do see her and Maya actually like grow as characters and become interesting in ways that they could not have that could not have happened in the original show because of what we know about Ritsuko's mom.
Yep.
But I appreciate that Gendo and Fuyutsuki were trying to use Nerve for their own purposes. They're going along with Sele and pretending to work with them. Sele knows that Gendo's going to betray them. It doesn't give a shit because they think they can prevent him from fucking them over. And they know that he knows that they know. Like, this is all, like, explicit, but they need him to defeat a certain number of angels or their plan fails anyway. So they have to let the person who they know is going to betray them do the work he needs to do. And it's literally a prisoner's dilemma of who betrays who first and how. And both Sele and Nerve think that they have got it under control. And I love how well that translated into the Rebuild movies from the original.
I think this just comes from playing too many board games. I can't help but look at these movies in terms of that, right? In both the what you just pointed out, but also, if you play a game like Dune or any political game, we always have that scenario where it's like, so-and-so's going to win on next turn unless you stop them.
Yep.
Right? So-and-so's going to win on the next turn unless you stop them. And basically, movie 1 doesn't really fall into that, but movies 2, 3, and 4 basically all end. All of them. The end of movie 2 is
someone's got 9 victory points.
Right. It's about to happen unless you stop it, and they stops it. And movie 3 at the end is going to happen unless you stop it. Someone stops it. And movie 3.0 plus 1.0, it's going to happen unless you stop it, and then it just sort of happens.
Well, but arguably, the end movies are the coalition of people who want the thing that will actually end the game, gang up and end the game.
Yep.
But
all right, so the rest of movie 2.
all right, so movie 2
it starts out introducing, Mari, right?
the new
So I guess
character.
We should talk about her, and also
they basically have her.
showing us-
She basically replaces a lot of what Asuka did in the original Eva, but not all of it,
and
because
also, what's the kid who the kid who dies
Toji?
Koji. He's in the movies, but Mari takes a lot of his stuff too.
Yeah.
except
Well, what
for
I
the
like is
dying
that
part.
the first movie was just the recap up until the preview. Actually, we got to talk about that too. I love that every one of these movies, after the credits, has a preview of the next movie, just like it's the original TV show, even with the same
last one
music.
doesn't.
Well, of course, the last one doesn't. But every one of those previews shows you things that are so fucking ridiculous and cannot be parsed based on what you just watched. I can't imagine having watched 3.0, seeing the preview for 4.0 or 3.0 plus 1.0,
plus 1.0,
and having to wait from 2016 to 2021 to see how that happens.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so Mari comes into the picture. She's a new Ava pilot. Right? And where she came from was, I guess, like this other base, right?
I love this.
In the original TV show, they basically do tell you, like, yeah, there are other nerve bases with other Avas.
Yep, there's the American nerve in Nevada that disappears. It's a plot point in the original Ava.
And there's the episode with the lava in the original TV series, right, where the Ava goes in the lava.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure in that episode they're working with some, other.
Yeah, remember Asuka and Unit 02 were a transfer from that other organization.
Right. They came from the European branch or whatever, right? So,
Yep.
But here they're actually showing us the other branch, right? And
Even better, while the movies kind of gave up on Futsuki's full deal and they didn't follow Ritsuko and all that stuff, what they did do is show you, remember in the original show, Kaji was up to something, but they only show you tiny pieces of what he was up to. In this movie, they show you what Kaji was up to pretty heavily. But my favorite moment was
explicitly
at the beginning of that, when Mari and Kaji and all them are doing their European thing to stop that angel from escaping. And the Ava self-destructs, and Kaji's like, I hate to use a kid for my plans, but this is real important. And he goes off to do his thing, probably with the key of Nebuchadnezzar. But
I think you actually,
Mari then is floating in the escape pod, and she's like, I hate to fuck over an adult for my secret plan, but you got to do what you got to do. And then in the third movie, her deal was like basically what she was trying to do at the end of the second movie was, as far as I would say, merge with the Ava using the backup codes to unrestrain it and trigger the impact herself and become a god. Like, it feels like that's what she was trying to do, and she got interrupted by Kaoru and all the other nonsense.
Maybe. So yeah, at the beginning of the second movie, right?
Yep.
They're at this Bethany base, right? Which is not the Japanese nerve we're used to. And at this Bethany base, the third angel is like locked up, right? It's like, it's not dead. It's just it was sealed. And I guess that happened, I guess, before even the first movie.
And I love, you get all this mechanical lore and all this like really fun sci-fi nonsense about how they deal with the angels.
You enter both the TV series and I presume the manga and this movies, they all start when Shinji is brought into the picture. All the stuff that happens before is a mystery to the audience and to Shinji, right? So in the TV show, the only things that really happened before Shinji showed up was all the stuff at the South Pole, pretty much.
Yep.
But in the movies, there's this other stuff that happened before, including trapping this third angel. And so what happens there when Mari is fighting the third angel with this like makeshift shitty Ava that's available there.
It's like it's provisional, like she's not even in the final like plug suit design or anything.
Yeah, but basically, it's implied that Kaji sort of let that angel loose to steal the key of Nebuchadnezzar for Gendo.
Yep.
Right? And the battle is a distraction so you can get away with it. So why does Kaji want to steal the key of Nebuchadnezzar and give it to Gendo?
Yeah, well, and I mean, remember the original show, Kaji was kind of playing both sides. He
stole like the Adam embryo thing and gave it to Gendo.
He stole the Adam embryo.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Yep, to give to Gendo, so Gendo could grafted into his own body so he could then, as Adam, merge with Lilith via Ava as a vessel, which was embodied in Rey, which was a clone that had the salvaged soul of Lilith, to then trigger the third impact, himself become a god, reunite with you. Like, that was his specific plan. The original show is very straightforward about what he was trying to do there. And he's basically trying to do the same thing. And Kaji is letting this happen in both this and the rebuild, because he has his own goals. And I still think his main goal was that he wanted all of this bullshit to fail and humanity to survive. I think that's all he actually cared about.
Oh, yeah, because, in both the movie and the TV show, right? He's always planting his watermelons and whatnot, right?
But that was planting the watermelons was, look, the whole point of this is so that we can have lives. That's the only reason we're fighting. Remember that. And in the movie, it brings that back. Like, Shinji comes to, just like in the original show, because he remembers the smell of the ocean that Kaji showed him in movie 2. And he remembers the smell of the earth. And he remembers that maybe humanity is worth saving independent of the cosmic space nonsense. Maybe humanity is not ready to destroy itself and become something different. Maybe we're still very young.
In the original TV show, right, you get sort of those, those famous scenes that I love so much, where it's a quiet, empty city with cicada noises. All the people have left, right? Eventually, it's like, Nerve is just hollowed out, except for the few people that are left there, which are the main characters of the show.
Well, because humanity has died out. The Room of Golf was empty and sealed. And in the original show, what were they even fighting for at the end when there weren't even that many humans left?
Yep. I guess presumably there were, just far away from Japan.
But look at that contrast in the Rebuild movie 2. That's because movie 1 was kind of rushed because it tried to condense so much just to set the stage for the differences. But movie 2 spent so much time showing you humans, the dense, smelly mass of humans.
Of people working at Nerve, something you didn't see.
But even outside of Nerve, just living their lives. Like, there's kids going to school.
There were a lot of scenes of showing the city's buildings going up and down through the, and like all the people who lived in the city. There was never that sort of evacuation point, really, where the city's empty.
And even you see, like in the later movies, you see Paris and all the other cities that were just like that. Like, there's this feeling that humanity itself, as it is worth saving and cherishing, independent of the whole Adam and Lilith situation out in space.
Right. I mean, Shinji basically was like, in the TV show, all he had as like, motivation to win. It's like, you have that, like the scene, right? Where Misato comes down and is like, yeah, see, the angels are trying to do this, which will destroy everyone. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's bad. But if there's no humans left, if there's almost nobody left, it's like, I'm really just fighting for what, this handful of people?
Yeah, I'm fighting for my shitty dad to be shitty forever as a god? Or I'm fighting for a bunch of old men running a conspiracy theory to be gods?
In the movies, they keep people around in some, they show you both, apocalypse, lots of people dying, like the whole bottom of the planet
But then they always show you there's still some humans hanging on. Like, humans are surprisingly resilient, and that is an overarching theme of the rebuilds.
Those humans were there in the original TV show, but the camera never really went to them after a certain point. You just didn't see them.
In fact, the camera backed away from them.
All the people that are still there, and also the ones that have been obliterated by half apocalypses.
Like, I really like in the end, like where you see the village where everyone is like, there's still humans even after the near third impact, like just living their lives. And you get that whole side story of Rey, like a clone Rey who didn't know shit, living a life among humans and like getting it 100%.
Yeah, and then being, rather she chose to continue living that life with humans and then disintegrating rather than to go back to what she was doing before.
Well, what she was doing before was, it's very clear that the dummy plug systems of the thousands of Ava and Ava-like things that are out there in the second 2 movies, they're all powered by memoryless clones of either Kaoru or Rey. And this is just one of those infinite sea of clones. But remember, when she died, you get a tiny little cross, just like when any Ava or any angel gets destroyed. But also, because one thing that was added to the movies that was very important was the rainbows. Those little rainbows that occur concurrent to the crosses appearing, because sometimes crosses happen without rainbows, and sometimes crosses happen with rainbows. Sometimes rainbows happen on their own, and toward the end, rainbows become halos. Every time a rainbow appears, it's because a soul was involved.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very important that when Shinji sees that ray die, there's the tiny little cross, just like an angel died, and there's a tiny little rainbow around that cross. That little ray had at least some soul there, which
Some
is
left.
which well, a soul at all, because
It's really reminiscent of Ghost in the Shell with like when you're copying people's cyber brain system.
yeah, the
right?
degradation of ghost dubbing.
Yep, exactly.
But I think that's really important because this show does act like the original show got into the Room of Golf and like that's where souls come from. This show
Talked about the Room of Golf in the movies.
Yep. But in the rebuild, the show like the rebuilds actually get into the science fiction aspect of nope, those doors can be opened by this set of situations specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Adam and Lilith have their own rooms of golf, probably.
Yep. So, because they're in like the spheres. Anyway, so the second movie, the rest of the second movie is mostly just angel battling, but unlike the first movie, it's battling, way different angels in different,
It's battling different angels and always in the context of remember what you're fighting for. Like the human life around it is what you're fighting for. It really focuses on that. And it also has all the same beats as that second part of the original show, but they're all like remixed. Like an angel takes over an Eva, but it's Asuka piling it instead of Toji. Like the same things happen, but different people are involved. So I kept seeing like, oh, the thing I expect is going to happen. And then, wait a minute, it's going a different way.
So at the end of the second movie, what's going to happen is an impact is coming, right?
I love that so much. It's like Sele and Nerve. Imagine if everyone who was planning all their bullshit and then somebody just suddenly triggers a victory condition like way early in the game, like way earlier.
So in the TV show, Unit 1 like eats the core of that one angel, right? And
pretty late in the show.
Right, and that's how it achieves like god levels of power, but it doesn't like become a god at that moment.
It doesn't have the key.
Right, so it takes a little bit longer. Here, it all happens at once.
Yep.
Right? The core, the angel, and I think the core of Unit 0 gets absorbed into Unit 1, and the wings come out right away. It's like it compresses that whole thing all into one, and then it's like, well, here comes the impact at the end of only movie 2, and 2 more of these movies are coming.
That was a moment watching that movie, because you'd already seen it when we talked about it. I was just like, when I watched it, I remember thinking, all right, so this must have been why Scott was freaking out. So the third impact's about to happen. And then, out of nowhere, Spare Vlogadoos from the sky, Kaoru,
So that's after the credits. So if you don't, that's the one thing, if you just end the movie before the credits, you don't see the very, very important scene afterwards, right? You would end movie 2 thinking, third impact, go watch movie 3.
Yep.
Right?
But also thinking, what could possibly happen in a third, let alone a fourth movie, if this is the third impact? Because the third impact in the original was the entire end of the show at once.
Yep. So in the after the credits, there's a very, very brief scene where Kaoru comes down from the moon with the Eva that was being made on the moon, right? This whole moon thing. And he takes a lance. You don't know which one yet, right?
Yep. Well, which one? There was only one in the original show. Yeah, so already we're in uncharted territory.
Right. But he lances Shinji to basically pause the third impact, right? To stop it right there. And that's what allows movie 3 to even exist.
So, and I can't stress enough, movie 2 came out in 2009. Movie 3 came out in 2012. And then movie 3, when it finally came out, all right, it's been 16 years. Shinji was decorporealized inside of that Eva that entire time. There's space shit going on. There's all these other people. Misato betrayed Nerve. There aren't rails anymore. We're on the Galaxy Express, and we're past Metalia and heading off into the
So going into movie 3, right? It starts out, they're like, someone is this. It reminds me a lot of some Gundam movies. Like there's something at a space satellite that someone's trying to steal, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell's going on here? You know, I just saw a third impact that was paused midway. You know, what is the state of the world now? You have no fucking clue what the state of the world is now.
Yep.
Right? How are we even continuing from that point? Are we just going to start over again? I thought movie 3 might have just started over from the beginning again. Shinji on a subway. Right?
Yeah, because like you said, all those characters on the the Wunder and everything, they feel so much like Gundam Seed type characters.
Yep. So they've created this completely new territory here at the beginning, slowly revealed to you over the course of the third movie, where Nerve has split into 2 groups, right? The Will group and Original Nerve. Original Nerve is basically just Gendo, Futsuki, Kaoru, and Rei. That's it. There's no one left.
And whatever's left of Lilith's soul and
whatever's left of the equipment that Nerve still had. A large part of the Earth is destroyed in the third impact.
There's little pockets of humanity living on top of giant,
everybody.
but they're living on top of like giant, complicated-looking sphere of Longinus-looking like pyramid things, or they're living in like these handful of zones. Ava technology is off the charts. There's Avas fucking everywhere. Everybody's got AT fields, and it's just like space nonsense.
Yeah, so the Will organization, which is, you know, basically everyone else, right? Masato mostly, but everybody else is basically fighting against Nerve somehow, and is also fighting to preserve whatever humanity remains on Earth, right? Gendo doesn't seem to care too much about that at all.
No, he did. Gendo gave 0 fucks about any human being on Earth except Yui from the beginning.
Yeah, pretty much. So Will is, you know, fighting for humanity. So they rescue Shinji from space and, you know, incorporealness.
Yep.
You know, they have Asuka and they have Mari, right?
Yep.
They don't have Rei.
Asuka's back. She's got an eye patch. She's an interesting character. She's like a lot how Asuka from the original would have been if she was more fully realized and not destroyed by the psychological damage of the angel that invaded her brain. And this is also the movie that gets a lot more into. The second movie does too. When they talk about plug depth entry and contamination. In the original show, they don't actually address too specifically from a sci-fi angle what that means. In movies 2 and 3, that is like a big part of the plot, is exactly what that means.
Okay, so they rescue Shinji, right? They confirm that it's him, but they put this thing around his neck like Battle Royale that'll explode so they can kill him and control him, because he's basically super dangerous. Like if he pilots an Ava, it could cause the apocalypse again, and they don't want that to happen. It's like they want to have Shinji, but they don't want to let him do anything because it's too dangerous, right?
Yep.
So Shinji sort of, you know, he sees the positives and the negatives of the Will side, and then he goes over to the Nerve side. It's a very sort of, you know, cliche thing where, you know, you have a character, you know, you have 2 sides opposing each other, and you have a character who, you know, goes from one side to the other and possibly back, and, you know, sees the good and the bad sides of each of the 2 sides.
I gotta say, Nerve,
sort of a neutral perspective.
Nerve felt
I feel like a lot of stories have done this. A lot of movies have done this. I can't think of any other examples right now.
Nerve on the moon and all the Nerve bullshit from like the third movie and the fourth movie, they reminded me a lot of Zybok, like that empire from Escaflowne compared to the rest of the world in Escaflowne. It was like this black pyramid, technologically driven, like robot society. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that too much. But
not too much. But yes,
I do enjoy the cyclical parallelism that happens with in movie 2. Shinji actually grows a lot and is a much better person and much more assertive, and everyone's happier because at a few points along the way, Gendo says good job. Misato explains something. Like all along the way, Asuka admits something. Like there are like 5 moments where someone explains something to Shinji, where in the original show they didn't say shit, and as a result, Shinji is just a better person, and you see everyone is doing better as a result. Shinji works hard to just help Rei, like, live a better life and be happy. And then
I wasn't going to talk about any of this stuff until the end.
Oh, I wanted to talk about it because in the third movie,
that's the whole point of the whole thing.
But in the third movie, now you see Shinji it's clear he realizes that this isn't like the same Rey, but he tries to do the same thing again. But he gets more and more despairing because he's failing because she doesn't have that connection. She doesn't actually come around until living with the humans in that refuge later. And you see her almost come full circle, and then the clone of Rey that Shinji tried to rehabilitate based on his experiences with the first Rey ends up being the one who rehabilitates Shinji.
Yeah.
I really like how that played out.
So Shinji's playing both sides here, right? I forget, does he get like rescued by Nerve, or like Rey comes and he goes with her by choice?
He leaves, he goes back with Rey by choice.
Right. But anyway, so at Nerve, he sees Kaoru there, hangs out with Kaoru, right? He doesn't see his dad too much, right? It's like,
well, because his dad at that point is already grafting the key of Nebuchadnezzar into his soul.
Yeah, exactly. But basically what happens is they got the Mega Ava there. What unit number is it?
Unit 13 is like the super one. God, I gotta pull up a wiki at this point. There's so many Avas, and they're all like specifically distinct, and you could literally do a 20 or 30-minute podcast about every one of them.
13 is the one, basically, in the original TV series, you had the DDR episode.
Yep.
Right? Shinji and Asuka having to, work in concert. Here, they take that idea to the next level. Shinji and Kaoru have to literally, it's a dual plug, Unit 13. They have to go in together.
Well, because you need two souls to trigger the fourth impact. Well,
right, yeah, and you need the two spears, right? Cassius and Longinus.
To do what Gendo wants to have happen.
Right. So this is basically, this is the, Unit 13, as opposed to the, the one that was made on the moon, which was 6, I think I said. I don't remember.
Was it 5? No, it wasn't 5. I gotta pull up the wiki. There's so many of these things now.
Yeah, but that one, the one that Kaoru piloted to stop Shinji in the post-credit scene of 2 is still basically down there, keeping keeping things at bay, right?
Yeah, well, even before that, remember, actually, total aside, but I did notice this. In the end, it's basically apparent that to trigger the full-on, ascension impact nonsense, you need 4 Avas or 4 things to make it happen. There's 4 atoms. They need the 4 ships at the end and all that stuff from the last movie. But there's that organization with the Vatican Treaty that says any given country can only have 3 Avas. It's very clear upon seeing the last movie, 3 Avas was the limit, because if you had 4, you could do what Nerve is trying to do in the 3rd and 4th movies.
Exactly. So movie 3, right? How does this thing fucking end? So they're piloting the Mega 13 together.
Yep.
Right? And
Shinji's going along with it to save humanity. But the only thing that bothers me about this is they go to do the thing to pull the spears out of the thing that is clearly an Lilith body. I don't want to get too much into the cosmology, because then we'll have to look at the wiki to use all the right proper nouns. But there's a moment where some unexplained things happen. Right at the last moment, Shinji's ready to do it, and Kaoru's like, wait a minute, wait, hold up. Those spears are not the right spears. Something's wrong. That is the moment that happens in the original show, where Kaoru goes all the way down to the bottom of Terminal Dogma, where the whole time Misato, the show, everyone has told the viewer, told Shinji, everyone believes that what is crucified in Terminal Dogma is Adam. And Kaoru shows up, and one of the most, the biggest moments in all of the original Evangelion show is Kaoru looking at it and saying, wait, what? Lilith? What the fuck's going on? That's not Adam.
Right, so that's a good point. Brings back how this is a rebuild, where it's that same point, right, but completely different, right?
Yep.
Instead of him, right, where Kaoru recognizes that there's a sham going on.
Yep.
And so now that he recognizes that, doing this is not what he wants to do, right? Isn't going to achieve his angel ends. He just kills it. He got Shinji to trust him earlier by taking off the battle royale thing and putting it on himself, the net thing. And then he just kills himself with it.
He gets decapitated just like in the original show. That's one of those like inviolable beats of Evangelion.
Yep.
That character gets decapitated.
They were restarting the impact again, and then they didn't have the impact again.
Yep. And I like how then
like I said before, you're about to win the game. We stopped you in the post-credit scene. You're about to win the game. All right, we stopped you, right? Because Kaoru noticed and he stopped you, right? So
and then the end, we almost come full circle of the world is even more fucked, like so much more than it was after the near third impact. And yet humans are still hanging on. Technology has advanced even further. Like,
so
I really like that opening scene where they go down to Paris to reactivate something European Nerve had been working on to nullify anti-AT fields.
So what's happened is in the sort of not complete, whatever number impact it was at the end of the fucking third movie.
There's a lot of impacts.
Yeah, the world is covered in red shit, just like at the original End of Eva movie. But it didn't finish the job. So obviously, if you're a human and you go out in the red shit, well, you're going to become just LCL or whatever happens, right? But if they've created some sort of protective shields, they can keep it out of certain areas.
I like how that technology was not explained specifically, but was used consistently in many, many parts of the movies.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense, even given the original End of Evangelion, movies, right? It makes sense, even given that, right? It made it fit exactly. So that red stuff is just it literally is just what it is. So and because the Eva pilots are different, they don't age, they're all special children, right? Whatever. They can go out into the red stuff with Evas or not and fight and set up, safe areas, and then humans can move into those safe areas, and as long as they maintain the equipment that Will has set up and such.
And it's just that the whole movie is just this humanity using technology and perseverance to continue to just fight to survive.
Yeah, so you get this whole, it's a lot like, there's that Angelic Days, like spin-off, non-canon thing, whatever it is, right? But this sort of is kind of like that. It's like, hey, we made here's a town where people are living and, living life for reals, right? You can experience it and get your shit together, right? Asuka and Shinji and whoever else comes to this town.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just really weird to see this kind of thing because Evangelion, all of it up until this point, takes place in space, cities, alone in military base type places, right? It never once had a town-like location with just people chilling, doing town stuff until this point. So that's really something.
Yep, and you see Asuka and all these characters living kind of what the best life they could live given the circumstances. And it's really just a story about humanity being worth saving and worth, like, it's unique in the universe in the cosmology of Eva. Because remember, the cosmology, like, what's happening, if you've seen the first show, like, it's actually pretty explicit. While in ancient times, a seed of life from deep space crashed into Earth, and that was Adam. And Adam...
At the South Pole.
Yep, well...
It came in, and Adam came in it was like a big sphere.
Yeah.
Right? And inside the sphere was Adam and...
Well, Adam and a spear of Longinus.
Yeah.
And
Dead Sea Scrolls. Basically all this equipment, right?
And what Adam was going to do is populate the earth with life driven from the fruit of life, which is the S2 engine, power, infinitely powerful godlike beings. That's Adam. They don't have free will, like there's no culture, there's a whole thing about them. Undecipherable space things. All the angels are basically life forms derived from Adam.
And presumably in a 2001 Space Odyssey like fashion, there were many seeds of, that were spread throughout the universe and galaxies that landed on various habitable places, similarly just like Adam did, and populated those planets. But the alien race that sent these out also sent out seeds of knowledge. Right?
And they had a rule. And the rule was you can never have these two kinds of life in the same place at the same time,
Right. And
because
that's a
that
biblical story, right? Is like Adam and Eve couldn't eat from the tree of knowledge.
Yep,
right?
you get
It's
one,
the
life
same
or knowledge.
It's
Pick
the
one.
story of Genesis, right? God is like, you can live in this paradise and live forever, and everything's amazing as long as you don't fucking know anything. Right? As long as you don't even realize that you're naked, right? And as soon as Adam eats the apple from the tree, right? God's like, what the fuck? Now you know things and you're powerful. That makes you like me. I can't have that. I'm the me. I'm the God, not you, right? I have power and knowledge.
Yep.
You only have one or the other. Fuck you.
So the plot of the original show of Evangelion, and this is extremely specific and straightforward if you pay attention.
Genesis in the title.
Yep. So what happens is with the first impact, the fruit of knowledge, Lilith, the other kind of life, crashes into Earth by accident.
In Japan.
It happens to land buried.
It's by accident, but in the movies we learn that actually that happens every time.
Yeah. Well, at least it happens every time to Earth.
Right. Earth always is the place where that gets to, and it's never supposed to be two. So this ritual of the impact ritual is actually just like this safety mechanism, like that, God, the alien gods put there, like, oh, if two of these accidentally land on the same planet, they'll destroy each other in like a massive apocalypse.
Yep.
That way there won't ever be any godlike beings out there.
Only one will survive. So what happens is the spear of... So arguably the spear of Longinus comes along as that safety, like that's like the spears are almost the enforcers of these rules. So when Lilith crashes, there's only in the original Eva, there's only one spear, the spear of Longinus. Now we don't know in the show if that was Adam's spear or Lilith's spear. All we know is that when Lilith crashes, the Earth gets covered in Lilith life. And as a result, the spear basically stabs Adam and says, well, there can only be one. So this is a Lilith planet now. And that's fine. The second impact happens when Sele and Nerve and all these fuck-ups go to the South Pole, find Adam, pull the spear out. Yeah, they fuck around. They pull the spear out, and now there's two, and that's a problem.
Now angels start coming, right?
So Adam wakes up. They then use the spear to reseal Adam with the spear. They get rid of Adam life. What remains?
The angels are the Adam life, right?
Yep.
So the angels are now coming to attack.
Lilith,
the Lilith life.
So basically, what happens is they wake up Adam, they kill him again. They take an embryo that they took from him, like they take this piece, and that's what Kaji steals and brings back to Nerve for Kendo Do's bullshit. But in that moment, Adam basically said, yo, there's a problem here, and all the angels come to fuck up the Lilith life and give the planet back to Adam.
Mm-hmm.
So what were the angels actually doing in the original Evangelion and in the remake? They're coming to kill Lilith and everything that spawned from Lilith, including
which is all humans.
Yep.
Yeah. Kill all humans.
It's a pretty straightforward sci-fi story.
Yeah, it's just they never explain it to you in words outright. You have to, you watch it, and then
if you watch the original show with the extended versions of episodes 23 and 24,
they explain a little bit more.
They explain it enough more to figure a lot of this out on your own without reading a wiki.
But I think the point of it is that all that stuff, like what is actually happening, why are right? It's like that stuff actually doesn't matter.
No,
right?
Because the moral of Eva is humans talk to each other. It's painful. The separated existence is painful, but human life is special. The fact that we are all individual and can never fully know each other is what makes the diversity of life on Earth so unique in the universe.
Mm-hmm. And so, right, the movies and the TV show, right? So basically, I did I say this when we did the original episode on the movies, but they're both saying the same exact thing, right? Is I could make a story, like an Aesop's fable, right? And
it's literally called The Hedgehog's Dilemma.
Right. I can make an Aesop's fable called Tortoise and the Hare, and the message I want to get across is that slow and steady wins the race, right? So in the original Aesop's fable, obviously the hare, right, doesn't win and the tortoise wins, right? But you could tell the same story, right, and just flip the script but still have the same moral. And that is what the movie does. In the original TV series, right, the moral is just talk to each other, and they show you what happens when you don't talk to each other.
Yep.
Right? It sucks.
Like, but the movie too is so specifically like, hey, what would happen if people actually talk to each other a little bit? Look how much happier literally everyone is.
Right.
Even Gendo is closer to being happy.
That's right. So in Tortoise and the Hare, they show you the tortoise being slow and steady and then winning. You could do the same thing and have the tortoise not be steady, the tortoise give up and lose.
Yep.
And that would give you the same message, right? Which is slow and steady wins the race.
Yep, you could have won, tortoise.
Message. Talk to each other. You just show the positive and the negative side, right? They did it and it was good. They didn't do it and it sucked. Either way, same message, same story.
Zooming all the way out, but taking into account, because what I like about Evangelion is the same thing I like specifically about Shoujo Kakamei Utena. It's relatively rare to have a large work like that where a literal reading of the events as portrayed is equally compelling to a purely allegorical reading of the events as portrayed. And I appreciate that. Like, that's one of the things I like more than almost anything in media. So taking the literal events as they're portrayed, the sci-fi aspect of this, I would say that the fundamental story that these Rebuild movies tell is that in the cosmic universe, there's the Adam life and the Lilith life, and humanity is almost an accident that comes about in this weird situation. And the moral at the end is the Wunder, Will, the third spear, is that humans are unique and special enough to where they should break the cycle of these rules of the gods and become their own thing. They are a free-willed, free-spirited, new kind of life that arises from this intersection, and they should overcome that instead of trying to become Lilith or Adam-style gods, because Gendo, Seele, all these groups, everyone who's trying to use Evas are using them to try to merge these powers together and become gods, playing by the rules of the gods. But there's this side story of humans are scarily capable by themselves. And humans should,
even though, right, it's like, how did humans make all this shit, right? Is that they keep, and this goes back to, Evangelion as a whole, just being, this guy Anno is a real big fan of like Godzilla and Ultraman, and all this old robot fighty stuff, right? And most of the show, it's just robot fighty stuff because he likes that sort of thing. You see in all of these movies, lots and lots of scenes of just huge battles that aren't really contributing to the story. It's just, Anno's a nerd who likes big robot battles.
I'm a nerd. I like big robot battles too.
Robot battles to enjoy. But in all of those stories, right, Ultraman, Godzilla, etc., all of those are stories about some huge catastrophe coming to squash humanity, and humanity combines its efforts and organizes and cooperates to develop, usually by technology and science, some amazing effort to not get destroyed, right?
Yep.
And so in the original Evangelion and this one, but in this one even more so, always showing you, look at this amazing shit that all these human organizations were able to make with their science.
Look, the gods are fighting, and meanwhile, under the gods, this tiny ragtag band of humans have made spaceships powered by AT fields and somehow have survived.
This angel that's mysterious alien thing with ridiculous powers that's enormous is coming, right? And somehow this robot that some humans made is going to fight it and win.
Yep.
That carries on from episode 1 of the TV show to the last second of the last movie.
And it comes all the way around to Shinji now having ultimate power and the spear of will, the literally human free will. And he decides, unlike all the alternative decisions he has made in various iterations of Eva, you know what? The problem is Evas. The problem is humans are still evolving and still have a lot of room to grow. It is not time to give them the cosmic space seeds and destroy them. Let them continue to evolve and see where they go.
Yep. So at the end of the last movie, right? They give you it's like, what could they do in Ava, right? That is like the equivalent of like, the terrible secret of space, like the thing, right? It's like they have Gendo and Shinji sit around and chat. It's like, you couldn't, what bigger payoff could you get?
Oh my, that was the biggest payoff in the whole thing was you get the scene of Shinji talking to himself, same as End of Evangelion, but then when it's Gendo and they're just talking and he's like, Gendo, why are you sad? And then Gendo's like, oh, I'm sad because of XYZ. And it's like, hello, you could have just said this to each other in the real world.
Yep. 26 episodes ago.
And none of this apocalypse shit would have even happened.
Well, Sele might have just went out then.
Yeah, or anyway,
they would.
but basically, you see that all the mysterious bullshit that all like, ooh, Gendo's up to something, Sele's up to something. No,
Gendo's just a really messed up dude who only loves this one woman and otherwise didn't love people at all before then.
Gendo, same as Shinji, just a human who's fucked up by the world. Sele, they're just fucked up old people. Like who want to
is Sele even people? That's a separate issue.
Well, it's in the original
that Sele might be one person or some AIs, or they used to be people who were uploaded.
Yep. Well, because notice when they are all being killed in the movies, you see this like flash of a nervous system fading out in those coffins each time.
Yep. It's a little 9000-esque. I think wasn't someone pulling something out of a wall or anyway.
Yeah, but I would say that what my best guess as to what Sele is based on all of the Ava stuff is they are humans who figured this stuff out and tried to follow the script, like the instructions from the Dead Sea Scrolls, to make all this happen, and knowing that it would happen anyway, but to survive it somehow and or become gods. They didn't give a shit about humanity. They individually wanted to, like John Malkovich into an Ava, and become gods, or at least survive the apocalypse.
So Shinji's talking to his dad finally, right?
Yep.
It's like, what bigger payoff could you have? The thing that was not allowed to happen ever before in an Ava thing. They finally give it to you. They chat. They say everything that needs to be said between them.
And then like his Dark Materials.
Well, just like, the original End of Evangelion, right? Pure Heart for You, it goes meta, right? At Pure Heart for You, right? You get this sort of fourth wall destroying shots of the movie theater. Ano giving his middle finger to the fanboys who didn't like the original TV ending.
You didn't like my metaphysical ending? You didn't want to worry about feelings?
Like abstract art? Okay, fine. I'll go even more abstract. Deal with it.
Oh, you wanted to know what happened to Misato in the real world because you cared about the physical plot of the show and not about the metaphor? Here you go. She's dead. Fuck you.
Yeah. So much like that fourth wall, we again break the fourth wall, right? But this time, in the fourth wall breakage, you have this sort of, duality of no more Avas, right? It's the no more Avas that Rim just explained, of Shinji saying, yeah, no more Avas. Let's get our human on here.
Yep.
But also, no more Avas in this real world. That's it.
Yep.
Like,
I ain't making more of this. I made it.
Right.
I made it,
This is it.
like 4 times.
I rebuilt it, right? I made it. It was a thing, and then I rebuilt it, and now it's done.
It literally ends with, like, the credits. It's a drone shot of a real city. Like, how much more on the nose could you get?
Right. Much like, stop watching get out of the cartoons and get back into the real world, right?
Yep.
Much like in the show, there's some sort of a time loop of this thing happening over and over.
But even if that's true, this is the last loop.
In the real human world that we live in, right, it's implied that Ano has basically been just, Ava's been coming, in his life over and over. He's had to do Ava over and over, even after, Pat, it was done in the 90s, but he's had to keep Ava-ing. Like, he was so tied to it.
Well, just like Shinji has too. Look at all the infinite pile of Ava. Like, you could say, if you want to be a nerd about it, you could make a very strong argument that this loop has been happening forever and that the original show was just one of the failed loops, and this is the final loop where everything lines up the right way. But you don't have to read it that way, and it tells the same story.
But what is definitely final is that in the real world, right, Hideaki Anno's loop of having to Ava over and over. It's like he rebuilt it, and now he has escaped. Right, the human being Hideaki Anno has escaped the Avas. He doesn't have to Ava anymore. He can now do other things instead with the rest of however long he lives.
I do actually. Some people critique this, but I did enjoy the uneven style of these 4 movies because I liked how radically different they felt. Like the fight scenes,
all the same. That would be kind of boring.
The fight scenes in the last ones almost felt like a promare kind of like ridiculous, overwrought situation. But they were
just about every movie that's it's like, what are you going to complain that, like, Star Wars, the original trilogy, all 3 were different styles, right? Indiana Jones, 3 different styles.
Only 3.
All these Lord of the Rings, I guess they were closer. The 3 Lord of the Rings movies.
They all felt the same.
They still had a little bit of difference.
I don't think they actually did. They didn't.
Not as much as the other examples. I gave, though.
That's actually one of my main complaints is how
Back to the Future, very different. The movies. Yeah, the most different.
Well, especially because Back to the Future was a weird, like when it was physically made.
We just talked about Alien. So different.
Yep. But Back to the Future, the first movie was made in the pre-VFX era. The third movie was made in the VFX era. And the middle movie was made in like this Roger Rabbit era of the early VFX mixed with practical effects. And it was like this weird time in cinema. And that contributed to
I've seen the second one the least, only maybe 1 or 2 times.
You should watch the Captain Disillusion thing where he breaks down how they did the special effects in Back to the Future 2 specifically, because it is nuts. Absolutely bonkers.
Yep. So anyway, that's the end of the 4th Ava movie. So these movies, I mean, I like that they exist because in existing, right, the original, I said this before, the original TV series is enhanced just because these are here.
Oh, do you know how hard I want to watch the original show again, just bearing in mind everything I've experienced from these movies?
Right. The TV show that already existed, that without editing it whatsoever, by simply creating these other movies, those 26, 28 episodes, right, of anime are now better than they were before these movies existed.
Yep, because I can watch the original and I can contrast the beats between the original and the new one in either direction.
Yep. But are these movies, though, I don't think the movies are as good as the TV show.
No, I like them a lot, partly because they did wrap up a lot of the sci-fi ends I was interested in. Because one thing a lot of nerds say...
fan service. They got a lot of fun stuff.
Yep. Well, like, you know what a lot of nerds say?
They also have a lot of issues. Just, it's like you can't really... Can you watch these without having... knowing anything about Ava? Yes, but it'd be hard.
But you know what I would say? There's an easy answer to that. Generally, with very few exceptions, the best way to experience media like this, where there's like a complicated situation, watch the thing in the order it was published.
Of course.
So watch the Ava show.
All things.
Watch the Ava movies. Watch the Rebuild movies. In that order. That is the best way to experience all of this because...
That's the best way to experience... I say that for everything, no matter what, right?
Because the movies...
Like, oh, no, you got to use a weird order. And I'm like, no, do the published order for everything ever.
The only one I ever disagree with is I think if someone wants to read the culture books, read Player of Games first before you read Consider Phlebas.
Matter too much. They're not as...
Well, I would say that Consider Phlebas is very different from the rest of them, and it also happens to be the first one published. But did you read that one?
Most of it. I didn't finish it.
Yeah, it's the least good one, honestly.
They were going to some planet to find a computer ship brain.
Yep. And like I would read that one after I read a bunch of other culture books, but that's the only like situation where I think I could make a case. But I would say that the show is like fantastic on its own. The movies are lesser if you haven't seen the show because there are scenes in the movies that are interesting and good, but like when Asuka agrees to pilot the test Ava, that is so much more profound to you as the viewer if you know how that went down in the original movie or the original show.
Yep.
Like that beat would be hollow
you can
otherwise.
Understand just on a base level what's happening, but there's a lot of things in the movies that lose a lot of their meaning and weight if you haven't seen, like, how big a deal is it Shinji and Gendo talking to each other at the very end, the ultimate climax of the whole thing? That's
how big a deal is it
if you didn't spend 26 episodes watching them not talk.
In the second movie, when Gendo agrees to go to the dinner party that Rey is hosting, one, if you saw the original Evangelion and I said those words, you would be like, what the fuck happens in those movies? But two, the fact that Gendo...
It's a lot less strange for him to say yes. It's still a little strange for him to say yes to but if you haven't seen the TV show, it's less strange.
But if you've seen the TV show, him agreeing to go to that dinner party or Asuka trying to learn how to cook are as big a deal as another sphere of Longinus coming from space and preventing the third impact. Like, it is weird and crazy to the viewer who knows.
It's like there's these two magnets and they had the opposite poles pointing at each other and never touching. And it's like, there's no way those can touch. And suddenly they're touching. It's like, holy fuck.
Yep. So I'm glad they were made. I'm glad there'll be no more. I like the message. I'm glad that it just complements the original show. But the original show stands alone and does not need these movies to be understood and appreciated.
No, it's better because the movies exist, but it's like, I'd rather watch the original show. The movies are like, do you need to watch these again? I guess you could.
I watched 3 of them twice, and I have no regrets whatsoever.
I mean, they're good, but they're not like, I wouldn't, put them on any sort of like legendary level. Like
they're A tier. They're not S tier.
They're not like a Satoshi Kon movie or a Miyazaki movie.
No. But I would say that the collected works of Eva that are canonical are together an S tier set of media.
But I think really it's the original TV show and the 20 Air and Pure Heart for You that are the S tier materials. Any other Eva thing, I guess I haven't read the manga, but any other Eva thing.
The way I described the manga, which I'm going to read all the way through now because I never finished it, but it was real good. And all the original manga is take the original show and just expand on every scene. Like, Fuyutsuki and Kaji talk a lot. Shinji talks a lot more with Kaji. Asuka has long scenes with, it's just longer and deeper, but it's the exact same story as the show with very few deviations. But another last thing I can point out that I think was interesting, we should stop, we've already gone a long time. One thing a lot of nerds say when they've seen the original show in the movies is that in the movie, Nerve gets fucked and everyone dies and the third impact happens, but it only happens because Shinji wouldn't pilot the Eva because he was being a baby until it was too late. Nerve, Nerve and Asuka and our team that we know and love almost won. They almost prevented the third impact in that movie, and they don't because Shinji wasn't there. So a lot of nerds like to say things like, well, if they just made more Evas and Shinji wasn't a baby, they could have won. And these movies are almost like, oh, you think that? All right, now there's 400 Evas. There's 1,000 spheres of Longinus. Nerve has spaceships. Let's see how this plays out. Oh, it's the same story. Guess what? It's the same story no matter how we tell it. And I'm real hungry, so I think we can stop right there.
Good.